Hey everyone, welcome to QuickBooks Payments. My name's ALICIA KATZ. I'll be your host. Let's go ahead and get started. So today is a webinar and it is designed to be interactive, and you are welcome to head over to the Q&A pane. If you're watching live, there's a Q&A pane in the Zoom and you can ask your questions there. You can also use the webinar chat to chat amongst yourselves, but if you have questions that you want me to answer, make sure you include them in the Q&A. I'll stop periodically throughout the presentation to take questions. If you are watching this recording, then you do still have the ability to ask questions. In the upper left-hand corner of your screen, somewhere in the sidebar, there's a class forums. It's an icon with some lines on it, and you can click there and you can ask questions, and I will be happy to answer questions after the fact as well. In order to earn a certificate of completion or CPE, you do need to answer the poll questions that are offered live through the webinar, or if you're watching the recording, there are 2 quizzes in the middle of the content and then also a final quiz and a survey. For those of you who are watching live, once your Zoom closes, there will be a survey up on your screen. Please do answer the survey. We do want to make sure that the courses that I am offering give you exactly what you need. Today's session is going to be very specifically about QuickBooks payments, but that does mean that I have to touch on other topics as well that we're not going to have time to dive into today. I have a full slate of other QuickBooks classes, and so you'll see this little icon occasionally with the roadmap. That's Alfred in the car, and those are pointing to other classes that we teach that have more information that you might need. So if you find yourself in that situation, definitely check out our other additional classes. There are handouts for today. I just gave a fresh upload last night, and so when you log in at learn.royalwise.com, you can go to your dashboard to go to the class. There's a section in the videos that says download the handouts, and then you'll be able to get a copy of my slide deck. Okay, now while everybody is getting settled in, a little bit about me. My name is ALICIA KATZ. I'll be your tour guide for today. I am the founder and lead trainer at the Royal Wise Owls, which stands for the On-Demand Web-Based Learning Solution, and that is where we teach QuickBooks and Apple products as well, with a little bit of business apps thrown in. I am the host of the unofficial QuickBooks Accountants podcast that you can find on anywhere that you go to listen to your podcasts. I used to be the host of QB Talks with Insightful Accountant. I've been a top 50 woman in accounting from Ignition. I've been a top 10 pro advisor from Insightful Accountant. And actually, I just made the top 100 this year. And in June, we'll find out if I made the top 10 or maybe the #1 spot again. So stay tuned for that announcement. All I can do is cross my fingers. All right, now today what we are going to do is a deep dive into QuickBooks Payments, which is the built-in merchant services inside QuickBooks Online. So we're going to first take a look at it as a concept, and we're going to compare it to Square and PayPal and other payment methods. We'll talk about the different terminology like swiped and keyed rates. We'll talk about different ways to sign up, and I have some secrets to get you cheaper rates. And then we'll talk about all the different ways that you can take payments. And there are a lot more that actually just came out in the last few months that I had to double this class from 1 hour to 2 hours so that I could cover everything. Even experienced users are going to be in for a treat. That was just the first half of the agenda. We are also then going to dive into how to do automatic recurring sales and payments. We'll talk about payment links, how it integrates with QuickBooks Online. I'll actually do a demonstration with the tap to pay and the swiper, so it's going to get a little techno complicated on us. And I'll even demonstrate the GoPayment app as well. Now, as you have questions, as I mentioned, if you're live on the Zoom, you can go over to the Q&A pane to ask your questions. If you are watching after the fact, there is a class discussions forum, and you are absolutely encouraged to go and ask questions there. Every time you do, it pings me, and I go in several times through the day to answer questions. Okay, so let's go in and start talking about QuickBooks Payments, which is the built-in integrated merchant services inside your QuickBooks Online. So first, why would you want to turn on QuickBooks Payments? The main reason is how thoroughly it integrates with QuickBooks Online, that there's a lot of different payment processors out there, and I'm old enough I can think back to the days when merchant services and taking credit cards was a thing that only brick and mortar businesses did. But we have such a small business economy that it really became necessary for anybody to be able to take payments at any time. So the world has absolutely changed over the last 20 years and even over the last 5 years since I started teaching this class. The hallmark of QuickBooks payments and why, if you are a QuickBooks Online user, you definitely want it, even if you're not used to taking credit card payments. It's completely automated. There's a lot of different ways that you can use to get money from your clients. So the classic way is that you send an invoice, and when they get it in their email, there's a button for review and pay. When the user clicks review and pay, it will open up an interface and we're going to see all of this. They pay it electronically. But then that's where it gets really cool. Once the client pays, QBO will automatically create the invoice payment and close the invoice. It puts the payment in undeposited funds or payments to deposit. And then when it hits the bank, it will automatically batch all of the day's payments together in one transaction and then match it in the banking feed. And it will do all of that for you. So literally, you don't have to do any work other than send them the invoice themselves. Now, if you think about that compared to external payment processing, then usually once they pay, you have to create the payment and you have to do the batching and all the matching. And so it saves you a lot of work and a lot of time. If you are already a Square user or a PayPal user, why would you want to make the change over to QuickBooks Payments? So first, as I mentioned, it integrates completely with QuickBooks Online natively and naturally. One of the benefits is also they will pay your invoice in full and they'll take your fees in a separate transaction. So you have complete transparency. When you send a $100 invoice, you get a $100 payment, and it makes it very easy to match. And then all of that automation saves a lot of time. When you are using Square and PayPal, there's some differences there. Now, they are some of the ubiquitous POS systems, point of sale service that you would see in a retail store. Square POS is one of the very, very common ones. And PayPal is used very commonly for e-commerce. And people are used to paying those. Square was the very first one that came to market back in, I'd say maybe 10 years ago now, when I would go to a trade show. Everybody would have their little Square on their attached to their phone, and then they would swipe their card through it. So Square was the first to market. But the problem with using them is that you have to use a third-party app in order to import them. It may or may not map to your actual products and services. So you either don't get any product and service information and it just says PayPal sales or Square customer. They also deduct their fees out of their payments. So if I get paid that $100 and they subtract $361 in fees, I'm going to see, I can't do that math in my head, $96.29 in my register. And then I have to go figure out, did I actually get fully paid and how does that work? So you have a lot more work to do in managing the individual sales. And if you're using an integrating app, sometimes they'll manage the fees for you, but sometimes you actually have to go and take the batching, go look up all the cards that have cleared for the day, get the grand total, and then manually subtract in the deposit the Square and PayPal fees. So it makes a lot more work. So this is some of the reasons why, if you are a QuickBooks Online user, QuickBooks Payments is absolutely the way to go. There are a lot of different payment methods that are accepted: Visa, MasterCard, American Express, Discover, all the normal ones that you would expect. Then it also does ACH, which is a bank transfer. And then new, just within the last couple years, you can now accepts Apple Pay and PayPal and Venmo as well. Now, if you are going to want to use Apple Pay and PayPal and Venmo as payment methods, you do have to use the brand new invoicing, the new modern invoicing layout. Intuit right now, as you're listening to this, is in the process of moving away from the traditional classic invoice and into a new invoice layout. And one of the benefits of the new layout is you have very powerful payment options that are not available to you in the old invoice, regular invoice, in the classic invoice. And that's one of the reasons why I encourage everybody to move over to it, because you're going to see as I teach this class all the different options and abilities that you have now. And then again, because you have all these different methods, it's different than Square or PayPal, where you are using Square, you're only getting paid in Square. And if you're using PayPal, you're only getting paid in PayPal. Another benefit that is also brand new is integrating with portals. Now, this was literally just announced, and one of the reasons why I wanted to teach this class. QuickBooks Payments can be used as a payment gateway with e-commerce and other apps that are integrated with QuickBooks Online. I personally have been using Method and using my QuickBooks Payments with Method for going on 3 years now. But even back in the day, 10 years ago when we had a WordPress site, we had QuickBooks Payments being our payment processor for WordPress, anybody who paid through WordPress. And you can see here a number of popular e-commerce shopping carts and websites that all you can select QuickBooks Payments as the payment method. There's 1,000 of them out there now. And what's beautiful about that is now you don't have to manage different payments coming in from different portals. You don't have to deal with the ones that are coming in through QuickBooks Payments through your QuickBooks invoicing, and then different payments coming in from Shopify and different payments coming in from Lightspeed, and then having to do all of your accounts receivable and all of your income through several different sources all at once. You now have the ability to use QuickBooks Payments as those portals and import it all into the same interface. So it just eliminates all of that management that you had to do. Some people have questioned the security of merchant services, but I assure you that it is completely secure. They take the security really seriously. Just like with the bank feeds, you have bank level encryption and security. The QuickBooks Payments is PCI compliant, meaning that the client's credit card data is completely safe. I'll talk about that in a little bit. It is FDIC insured. Actually, that's the QuickBooks checking account that's FDIC insured, so that probably doesn't belong on the slide. You can turn on your two-factor authentication so that you can get extra security codes if you want to. And when you put a credit card number in or a bank account number into QuickBooks Online, as soon as you finish it, it masks it with stars. So once you've put it in, even you don't have access to what those original credit card numbers were. All you can see are the last 4 digits. So once the data is in, the data is in. Let's go take a look. And are there any questions? If there are, go ahead and put them in the Q&A. Now, a lot of people are cost conscious, and their question is, well, if QuickBooks Online Merchant Service Payments is more expensive than the other ones, why would I use it? So let's actually start by looking at the actual physical cost. The first thing that we need to do is talk about the terminology. And even with this terminology, you'll see in a minute that Intuit is putting another layer of terminology on it because they want the business owners to really understand what it means. But personally, I think it makes it more confusing. So what you're going to find is that you have a regular rate, and there is no per transaction rate. There's just the flat rate for the way that you take the payment. And they vary from keyed, which is really manual. So a keyed rate is one where you're managing the credit card itself. You're typing the numbers into QuickBooks, or you're using the app and you're taking a picture of the card, or you are using a recurring sales receipt because, as we'll see, you had to put the payment information into that sales receipt. Or shopping cart transactions are also counted as keyed transactions. as opposed to swiped, which means the card is present. You've got the customer right in front of you, and you're either using the reader or you're using your phone. So that's the safest, lowest methods because the customer is right there in front of you in person. So if you're using tap to pay, you're using a reader, or if you're on a PC, the old microtext swipers actually work as well. So any of those methods are swiped because the card is present. The payment method is present right in front of you, so the rates are cheaper. When we talk about invoiced methods, that's when we're talking about the fact that we are generating the transaction, like sending an invoice, but the customer is putting in their own payment information. So it's a hybrid situation where you're both involved. So invoiced means you're sending them an invoice and they're clicking the review and pay button, or you're using the recurring payments that we're about to see. And so in that case, you get a kind of a medium level because it's a combination of you and them both. And then ACH has its own separate rate. ACH is electronic funds transfers or bank-to-bank payments, where the client is giving you their account number and routing number for their checking account, and then the money is going directly from their checking account to your checking account using QuickBooks Payments as the gateway. So that's the terminology that we're going to be using: keyed, swiped, invoiced, and ACH. Now that I've mentioned that, let's take a look at the rate comparisons. This chart is literally copied out off of the Intuit website like 2 days ago. So this is the most current rates. If you are watching this 2 years from now, these may not be the rates, and you should go check and see because they do change. The comparison that they gave was QuickBooks, Square, and Stripe. I added PayPal as well, although I didn't take the time to do the PayPal comparisons at each level. So PayPal just varied from 2.29 to 3.49 plus a transaction fee, so you can just get a feel for it. So basically taking it from the top, we have QuickBooks Payments, Square Payments, and Stripe. Stripe is one of the most common for e-commerce, Shopify or BigCommerce. Stripe is one of the common connectors. You'll notice in the Square and Stripes that there's a percentage and then a per transaction fee, which means that you pay the percentage and a charge per transaction. QuickBooks Online Payments or QuickBooks Payments had that also up until like only a year ago, and then they just went to a flat fee. And for small ticket items, it's cheaper because 30 cents on one transaction when your charge is $1 is a 30% charge. Although if it's $1,000, then 30% is 30 cents is a small fraction of it. But they decided that it was just easier just to give us flat numbers. So the first one is the cards and digital wallets, and that's the equivalent of the invoiced level that I was talking about earlier. So invoices, recurring payments, quick requests, and using any of the payment methods, it's just a flat 2.99%, whereas Square is 3.3%, Stripe is 2.9% plus that 30 cents, which can make it a little higher or a little lower. But you can see there that the base rate is right in there. ACH payments are 1%. There are some caps on it that I'll talk about in a little bit, but the ACH payments is a 1% fee of the bank transfer. In-person payments, those are the ones that I was calling swiped earlier. That means that you're using a card reader or tap to pay on an iPhone, and it has all of the different payment methods, and it also works with Google Pay and Samsung Pay. When you have a card present or an in-person payment, the percentage is 2.5%, which is lower than Square and Stripe. And then last is the keyed in, and those are the ones where the manual processing where you are putting in your customer's payments. That means you're touching the payment method or accessing it. And so that's a little higher. That goes up to 3.5%. And you can see that while that is a higher rate than the other rates, it's still lower than Square and Stripe. Now, here's a secret for those of you who are pro advisors, meaning that you have passed your QuickBooks Online certification from Intuit. You get cheaper rates. When your client signs themselves up, they get the retail rates that I just talked about. But if you sign them up, when you do it during the client enrolling process, when you're creating their account and choosing all of their services, do they need payroll? Do they need online bill pay? Do they need QuickBooks payments? When you do it in line with that, they get cheaper rates. The card reader rate goes down to 2.3, so you're saving 0.2%. The cards and digital wallets goes down to 2.8, so you're almost 0.2%. Keyed in cards is 3.3, and then the bank transfer has a cap on it. So it's still 1%. Now, I'm having a debate right now with a couple people whether it's $10 or $15. You may come up with 10, you might come up with $15 max, but that basically means that it's 1% up until you hit that magic threshold. But then once you top $10 or $15, then you don't pay anymore. For a lot of clients, that is huge because if I have a client who processes $2,000 invoices, and I've got one client who does $20,000 invoices. 1% of $20,000, and correct me if I'm wrong, is $200. So it's costing them $200 to process that. And this way they only pay 10, or maybe it's 15. So I always build in the sign up for QuickBooks payments and make sure that I'm the person who signs up the client. I have also read, but I have not confirmed, that if you process more than $2,500 in 1 month, you can actually call them up and possibly get your rates reduced even further. So if you're like my client who has the $20,000 invoices, you can call them up and see if you can get these rates shaved down a little bit more. As I mentioned, if you are a pro advisor, then you can sign them up during the process. And there's actually a couple different ways of doing this. So as I mentioned, one is when you add a client and you go through the setup process and you start adding the subscription and you go in and you pick your version of QBO and you select it and you're going through this whole process. Then I'm going to skip payroll. Here's where you can add QuickBooks Online payments. And so when you select this, you can see here the rates that you get. So this is what it looks like when you're doing it during your onboarding process. If the client already has QuickBooks Online, you can still get them in. So here's the secret for this one. You go to the Pro Advisor tab and then go to Benefits. And then down in your benefits, there is a benefit here for QuickBooks payments. And when you click on Get Discount right here, then you can see the rates right there. And then down here's Copy Page Link. And when I click Copy Page Link, it gives you this kind of crazy code. But now you can copy that and send it to your client in an email or however you want to. And that will guarantee that they sign themselves up getting your Pro Advisor discount. So that is how you do that process. So again, where we are was in the Pro Advisor benefits and then down towards the bottom to go get your discount. So that's how to get them that discount. Now, another alternative is using a QuickBooks Solutions provider. And a QSP is an external reseller for Intuit that 20 years ago, they were one of the main ways that you would get your QuickBooks subscriptions and services. Today, you can now do it through the Pro Advisor portal, but I still use a QSP. In fact, the one that I use is Complete Business Group, and I put a little QR code down there for it so that you can get there too. And you can see here that this is pulled off of their website. The MSRP processing rates are Intuit's regular rates. And then through CBG, when I sign them up, you get the cheaper rates. Right now, we're still debating whether that is $15 or $10. But the reasons why I like to use a QSP to do my onboarding for QuickBooks payments, as well as payroll and other services, is I get a direct support channel outside of calling Intuit support. CBG has their own QuickBooks Payments rep that when I sign up, he's literally the person who does all of the signups. He's somebody that I can use to call when there are problems or I have questions. I can ask him directly instead of going straight through to the support channels. So I really like that extra white glove service. And so if you're a bookkeeper, you can sign up with QSP and have these same resources available to yourself as well as getting the cheaper prices for your clients. Now, in addition, you also get a percentage of sales. And this is true for Intuit as well when you sign up the client during the registration process. Now, it's pennies on the dollar, but you actually get a small revenue share of the profit of it. So not the charges themselves. Don't go, oh my God, I'm going to get rich. No, it's literally pennies on the dollar. But because I have signed up literally hundreds of people over the last 10 years, I honestly make $600 or $800 a month in other people's merchant service fees as an affiliate. So I'm a huge believer for it. And there are some limitations. Not everybody is accepted. You have to have a good credit rating. And you also have to, there's certain industries that are not accepted. So if they consider your industry at risk, you might have trouble getting a QuickBooks Payments account. Travel is one of those. Cannabis was one of those, but I think that's changing. Sex workers or vice industries generally are not accepted. Travel isn't accepted because there's a lot of trip cancellations, so they don't want that level of chargeback. So that's why that's considered at risk. So it's not a guarantee that you're going to get accepted, but most companies are. All right, so this is a good time to ask questions, and there are a couple of them in the chat. Jeff is saying that under your QSP, you have 7 days to get them active, or they cannot get into your account. That or under your account. That is probably true. CBG might have a different way of doing it, but I noticed that what CBG has done now is said that not only do you need to sign up, but you need to run your first $5 charge in order to get accepted. And I think, Jeff, that's the way that they started handling the fact that people were signing up and then not using it. So to make sure that they come in under you and you get those residuals, ask them to make one test payment. Okay, we are officially done, but if other people have questions, Richard, you had a question that came up, and Jeff, we might even want to include this question. Richard had commented, I have a rate less than 2.3% when I swipe a client's card in person. Should I keep me mouth shut? That's actually a good question. So if you have been in using QuickBooks Payments for some years now, it's very possible that you're just getting the same rates that you used to get way back then. Like the swiping charge used to be 1.5%, not 2.8%. So your merchant services may still be running at your old rates, in which case, do not change your rates. Stick with the ones that you have. Do not disconnect your QuickBooks Payments and shh, don't tell anybody. And then they'll leave it in place.
Okay, thanks.
Let's get into setting up your QBO. The place where you go to do this is under the gear. You go to account and settings and then to the payments section. And I'm going to actually go in and show you a lot of these. But this is where you can get access to the Merchant Center. You can see your deposit speeds. You can double check your bank accounts where you're depositing to. This is where you can see who the business owner is. You can access your monthly statements. You can double check your chart of accounts mapping, control which payment methods are turned on or not, and then elect for dispute protection, which we are going to talk about. So let's actually go in and do this. I am in Wild Style Construction, which is my sample company. So nothing you see here is real. This is all just a playground. But I'm going to go to my settings gear right here and then go to account and settings. And then on the left-hand side is payments. If you are not already signed up for payments, this would be a screen giving you the opportunity to sign up for payments. But again, that's where your customers get the retail rate, not the wholesale rate through you as a bookkeeper. And if we have business owners who are watching this, then talk to your bookkeeper to get you signed up at those cheaper rates. Okay, as we can see, here are the merchant details. This is your merchant ID number. If you are communicating with Intuit, this is the ID number that they're going to give you for merchant services. We're going to come back in and show you the manage account later on. All right, deposit speed. You don't have any control over this. This is just where it's telling you. A credit card is now 1 business day, so you should get your money the next day, unless it's a weekend, in which case it's going to be a few days after that. Bank transfers take a little bit longer. They take 1 to 5 business days. And so again, if there's a weekend in the middle, it could take a week. Here is where you pick your deposit account. Which bank account are you depositing into? And you can change it and pick a different bank account. This is actually a good moment to talk about QuickBooks Checking, which is the checking account that comes inside QuickBooks Online. When you sign up for QuickBooks Checking, they actually enroll you into QuickBooks Payments automatically, and they point your QuickBooks Payments into your QuickBooks Checking account. And this is a PEBCAC. You need to come in here and double check this and make sure, because when a lot of people sign up for QuickBooks Payments, it will default to QuickBooks Checking, where they think it's going to their operating bank account at Bank of America or Chase or Wells Fargo or Credit Union, wherever. And then they're freaking out because the money's not getting into their checking account. They're getting the money, it's just going into QuickBooks Checking. So you have to come here to make sure that it's going to the account that you want it to go to. Now, instant deposit. Right here. Let me actually go to the next slide and talk about instant deposit. So we already saw that credit cards are hypothetically 1 day and ACH is 1 to 5 days. But you do have the ability to turn on instant deposits. And when you do that, you have to use a debit card in order to get the deposit speed up. And what it basically does is it pays to your debit card as the intermediate so that they don't get caught short if something happens. What's cool about this is you can schedule it for specific days. I don't know why you wouldn't just put it on every single day, but it does cost an extra 1.75%. Although one of my hacks is that if you have QuickBooks Checking and you deposit your QuickBooks payments into your QuickBooks Checking, they don't charge you for the increased speed. So it's completely free. So for me, it's a no-brainer. So I'll go in to set up instant deposit. And then here you can pick your existing bank for a 1.7% fee, but the deposits are available the same day, but it's going to cost you. Or if you open up the QuickBooks Checking account, it's completely free. It's FDIC insured up to $5 million, and you get 3% APY on the money that you put in QuickBooks Checking's envelopes. Now, I don't have time to really go into QuickBooks Checking. I actually have a class coming up. I'm not sure the date of it, but we have a whole class just on QuickBooks Checking that you should definitely check out. So there are some benefits to not only getting your money instantaneously, but if you put it into the QuickBooks Checking's savings envelope, you get 3% interest, which is awesome. So now I'm not going to go and sign up for this right now, but this is where you can set up the instant deposits. Once you have connected the bank, then it takes you to this screen where you pick your days of the week, and why not do all of them? Unless you're paying 1.75, in which case maybe you just want it on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday so that you can have your money and not wait until Monday. The next section is the business owner info. And so this is the address and the phone number for the business owner. You have to remember that QuickBooks Payments Merchant Services is a financial account with financial responsibility. And when you put in the application, it's going to ask you not just the company's information, but you have to have the business owner or the responsible party in that application as well, because no matter what happens with the company, it all comes down to the one business owner's responsibility and accountability for the funding. And so that's the attached person right here. The next section is your documents or your monthly statements. Now, this is a new account for Wild Style Construction, so there's nothing here. But I'll show you a sample statement in a little while. So this is where you would go to open up your statements, or when you're reconciling a QuickBooks checking account, you can get your statements from there as well. But this is a nice way of getting to your statements really easily. Now, we have to talk about the chart of accounts mapping, this next section. And this is really confusing, and I don't understand why they just can't draw this information from what we've already seen. But you have to map to your chart of accounts where your standard deposits are going, where your instant deposits are going in case they're somewhere else, and what expense account do you want your processing fees to be assigned to. And this is a problem. This is a PEBCAC. Problem exists between chair and keyboard. And that's because it's almost redundant. We set up the deposit account up here, but there's a separate place here. And if you have it, this is why I was saying that some people will have it like it'll go to their QuickBooks Payments account here, but they have it mapped to their operating checking account here. And that's why QuickBooks is putting it in a different account than the money's actually going. So you need to make sure that those two things absolutely match right here. Same with instant deposits. Are your instant deposits going to your checking account or to your QuickBooks checking? Make sure that so those can go to a separate place. And then your processing fees. Do you have it just going to bank fees? That's fine. A lot of people will make a separate merchant services expense account so that they know how much the merchant service fees are, which is different than an overdraft fee, for example. So I always make an expense account specific to my merchant services. In this file, it says QuickBooks payments fees. In other files, I might make merchant service fees. If, that way I can put Square and PayPal. If I have other merchant processors, I can put them all into that one bucket. In other words, you have to make sure that this chart of accounts section matches the reality of what's happening in your file. Okay. The next section are the payment methods, and these are on by default. There's a little see rates right here showing me what my specific rates are, and it does look like I got a max of $15 and not the $10 right there. Right now, all the payment methods are turned on. The last section is about dispute protection, and if you have chargebacks can just be pulled right back out of your checking account, and then you have to open up a case with the Merchant Center. If you decide that you're in an environment where you don't want to have high risk of somebody pulling out a $20,000 payment, maybe you've already used the money, you can turn on dispute protection. And when you have dispute protection, if there's a customer initiates a chargeback, they will not take the money out of your checking account. They will process it separately and start a case, or maybe just give the client the money back. You can do it $10,000 per dispute. You have a $25,000 limit across the year. But in order to get dispute protection, you have to pay for every merchant service transaction an extra 0.99% fee. So it's basically an extra 1% fee, but then you have permanent chargeback protection. But you're paying the fee whether or not you're going to get charged back for any of those transactions. So you'll have to do the math and see whether that safety net is worth the extra money to you. And you can see that right down here under the payment dispute protection at the bottom. And this has to be turned on by the primary administrator to the file in order to access this. So those are the account and settings. In the sales section, that's where you go to turn on and off your payment methods. And that way you can either make everything available for your client, which helps them pay faster, but I have a lot of people who are okay about the ACH 1% fee, but don't want anybody paying 2 to 3% for each of their charges. So some people will turn off the credit cards and only take ACH fees. One more thing to note here is that you have the ability when you turn off all of your payment methods, when you have QuickBooks payments turned on in general, but if you turn off all of the payments, you will have an option for the customer to pay the fee. So it's an interesting option where they will be able to pay by ACH. They will pay the extra fees, but otherwise it will just send them to pay it however they would pay it if they don't want to pay that fee. But it's interesting that you have that ability to force the fees on a client. One of the ways that I actually use that is I do have all the credit card information and run all my automatic payments in all the ways that we're about to see. But if a credit card expires, then you can't run your payments anymore. And I was having trouble getting in contact with some of my clients. So what I did was I turned off their payment methods and told them that they're welcome to pay, but they'll have to pay the fees from now on. But they can go ahead and call us and give us their updated payment information, their updated credit card information, and then we'll pay the payments again. And sure enough, all of them except one got on the horn and called us, and we were able to update their payment information and start running their credit cards again. So I kind of used this technique as a little bit of leverage. You do also have the ability not just to turn them off blanket, but you can control it on a per invoice basis as well. And I'll show you where that is in a little while. So where I'm going for that is over to sales, and I click on sales. And then there's a section right here for invoice payments. And this is where this is across your entire system. You turn off, well, maybe I don't want to accept credit cards. Then this is where you would turn that off. Now I'm going to leave it on. There's accepting ACH payments, accepting PayPal, and there's a Venmo icon next to PayPal as well. So Venmo is actually an option for your clients as well. If you don't want PayPal and Venmo, you can turn that off. This also gives you a field for your payment instructions, and where anything that you want to show up on your invoice as payment instructions, you can put it here, and then when you send the invoice, it will show on the invoice as well. Now, I don't want to change any of those, so I'm going to cancel that. And that takes us to the end of our settings right there. One other thing I want to point out, and it's not a requirement, but I highly encourage you to also edit your payment methods list accordingly. So you go up to the gear, you go to all lists, and then look at your payment methods. The terminology that QuickBooks needs in order to process the payments is all they need is a generic credit card, and that will run Visa, MasterCard, American Express, and Discover. You don't have to have separate line items for Visa, MasterCard, American Express, and Discover unless you want to. But just credit card will run them. To run an ACH payment, the terminology is check. And basically, it's an electronic check. And then you might have clients paying you in cash. So cash is nice too. So those are the kind of the three that everybody needs. But of course, you can make this list as granular as you want it to be. When I do that myself, here, go up to the gear and then to all lists. And then here are my payment methods. And you can see here that I have other ones in here as well. I don't really need e-check because it's the same thing as getting paid by check. Somebody thought it was helpful here. You can have money orders. You can put in PayPal and Square. Your system automatically will set up QuickBooks Payments Credit Card and QuickBooks Payments Check, and those are the ones that it knows that it's running through the system. So we might want to use those instead of deleting those. But if you have other ones, so you can customize this list. The thing that I wanted to show you is that when you make a new one, and let's just say I was going to make a Discover. Now I'm not going to save it, but in order to make it available to run as a payment method in QuickBooks Payments, you have to check off this is a credit or debit card. Then you will get the tools in order to run that payment method. So that's what you need right there. So I'll go ahead and I'll save it, and now Discover is on the list. Now, for some reason, the check marks are not showing up in this column. I'll have to put in feedback about that. Not sure why that's not happening. Let's go ahead and answer some questions. Okay, the first one. If you have QuickBooks Checking, do you have to get the credit card payments sent to it, or can you direct the payments to go to your regular checking account? So we've already answered that. You can have your QuickBooks payments go to any checking account that you want, but the benefit of QuickBooks Checking is that you can then put the money in an envelope and get 3% interest. Okay, and then the next one, can you clarify if you can set it up to where the client pays the $2.99 for credit card payments, or are you only talking about ACH fees? So the fees that we're talking about so far are you as the vendor paying the fees. QuickBooks Online does not have the ability to, as a general setting, in order to say the client's going to pay the fees, I'm passing the fees on to the client. There is a workaround for that I will show you, but at the moment, everything that I've talked about so far are all you paying the fees. Let's talk about setting up your invoices and emails. So we're still in the setup process for dialing in and using it. You can set your default messaging for the emails that go out, and you do that under the gear and in the settings under sales, under messages. And you can customize it with every send. Let's go up and do it. So the gear and then account and settings, and I'll go to the sales section, and then down here is messages. You can start by using a greeting and saying dear first name or dear full name or dear company name. You can actually set these for several different types of forms, but right now we're specifically talking about invoices. You can make your own subject line for what you want the subject line to say, and then customize the default email message that gets sent out with every invoice. This is a good opportunity for you to put in your branding and your messaging and the tone that you want your clients to associate with you. You have the ability to email yourself a CC copy of every email that is sent or every invoice that is mailed. It is almost entirely redundant because you can go in to see the status of all of your invoices in QuickBooks. But if you're one of those people that you just have to see that it got sent, you can CC yourself and have them all pile up in your email as well. I'm turning that off. You also can CC or BCC your invoices to additional addresses. Maybe you have a staff person who needs to see them and manage them, so you can turn that on. So once you have changed all of the email message to say what you want it to say, you would then save it. Every time you send an email, you can change it. And I talk to my clients through my invoices. So every time I send one, what you just saw pops up, but then I'll go in and change it, maybe talk about what, summarize what we just talked about, or give them a link to the recording or anything that I need. You can customize every single one every single time. Now, there's another section in the sales for online delivery options. And this is where you specify what is going to be contained in that email that is going out. You have the ability, let's actually just go look at it. So I'm in the same screen. So I'm still in settings, I'm still in sales, and I'm down at the bottom for online delivery right here. And the options here are show a short summary in the email. And if you do that, it's just going to say, you owe me $380. If you show full details, it's going to give all of the line items of every product or service that was on the invoice so that they have it at the root level just looking at their email. So in some cases, that transparency might be nice. In other cases, that transparency might be too much information and you're giving proprietary information to somebody who's not supposed to see it. So you have to be judicious which one is appropriate for you. I'll go ahead and I'll leave full details in email on because I like to have all of that right up front. Then you also have the ability to attach PDFs to them. You can attach it to invoices. You can also attach a PDF to credit memos, sales receipts, refund receipts, estimates, and payment receipts. And that way, when you send the email, it will have a PDF that they can download, they can import into their QuickBooks, and that way they have that extra documentation. If you don't email the PDFs, when the customer goes to the review and pay button, they're still going to be able to download a PDF. So you're not preventing them from getting the information. And it may also be that if you include a PDF, then they're going to skip the whole review and pay process and go straight to their accounts payable, and that they'll have to go through their channels where they print your PDF and they send it and they cut you a check and go through the traditional account payable, bill paying workflows, and you might not see your money for several weeks. So Intuit has actually found that if you don't include the PDF, you get paid faster. But I include the PDF because my clients need it. So there you go. There are some additional options right here for your invoices. Online invoice is the invoicing system set up through QuickBooks, so I don't override it, but there are plain text and HTML email options also. I haven't, in all my years, ever seen anybody need one of these options, so I don't use them at all. And then when you're done, of course, you save and you say done. So I'm going to head over and look for some more questions. I don't see any, but if you have any, this is a good time to ask. We've done all the setup. Now we're going to start talking about how to get paid. We're going to start through the old school, the oldest method that has been there from the beginning about running ACH and credit cards. So basically, you can run credit cards through any invoice and any sales receipt. That there's a payment method option on the transaction. And when you select credit card, you will then have a button to enter in the credit card details. The key here is to make sure that you leave the check mark on for process credit cards. When I'm doing troubleshooting on a client and I go into their undeposited funds, we'll see credit cards up there. And why are they still there? If you edit them, you'll see that check mark was not checked off and they didn't actually process the payment. So make sure that this check mark is on. When you are taking this credit card information to type it in, you have the ability to store that information. So when you click that button, this is what you get. You get a window that says, what is the credit card information? So you're typing it in. Here's their credit card number. Here's their expiration date. Here's their 3-digit code. Here's the address where it's billed to. And when you talk about PCI compliance, this is the breakdown. QuickBooks Payments is PCI compliant, but where are you getting this information and what are you doing with it and are you storing it? If you're on the phone with the client, no problem. They're just telling you and you're putting it in. But if you have them fill in an authorization form or fill it in on paper and send it to you, what are you doing with that paper? Are you storing it on your hard drive? Or do you have a piece of paper on your desk? All of those are not PCI compliant. So the problem with PCI compliance is usually the user, not the financials, not the processing system itself. So make sure that you are not exposing your client's payment information in any way. When you are filling this in, you'll see down at the bottom here, you can see, want to save this card for the future? Ask your customer to sign the authorization and download the authorization. I'll show it to you in a second. You also have an option for saving the card for future use. When you save that card, it will be available in the client's details as well. Now let me show you some of what I'm talking about. So that link that says download an authorization form, here are the forms. Now, again, this goes back to 20 years ago when you didn't have any other electronic payment methods. So they're giving you this form to fill out, but if you give this to the client for them to fill out, you're not PCI compliant. So buyer beware. The form that they include also doesn't have all the fields that you need, ironically. So in the notes for this class, I actually included an authorization form that we created and customized that has all the fields that are needed. I'm providing it for you, but again, yeah, probably shouldn't be using it. Now, where this looks in your QuickBooks is when I go look at any of my customers. Let's go ahead. I'm going to pull up myself. and I click on edit, anytime you save the information, you're going to now see it down here in this payments section. You can also enter the information from here as well. I can put in the credit card and enter in the credit card details. And now notice that doing it from here, not from the invoice, has much less information about it. But I would manually put in that information and save it, and now it will stay available to me. Again, the irony is that once you've added it, you don't even have access to it. All you're the last four digits, but your system can run automatic payments. So that's the beautiful part about saving it inside the client. ACH works almost exactly the same way. You open up an invoice or a sales receipt, and then you change your payment method to check, and then that opens up the ACH, and it will ask you to enter in the bank information, the routing number, the account number. But something super important here that I actually just had to troubleshoot my own problem with, make sure your deposit to says undeposited funds or payments to deposit before you check off I have authorization and would like to process this transaction. Because once you check this off, it will automatically, this box just goes away. The deposit to box is gone. And then it will go wherever you want, wherever it's said here. And I recently had the problem that this deposit to said a different bank account in it, and the transaction still went to my QuickBooks Checking where it's supposed to, but the transaction in QuickBooks went to the bank account that this field said, even though it has nothing to do with my payments. So that is a PEBCAC for you. There's a troubleshooting tip for you. And basically, when I'm looking at check right here, it says enter bank info, and that's where you put in, you select as a business checking or consumer checking, you put in that information. There's an authorization script. If you're on the phone with them, you can just basically say, read this. This is to confirm that on April 22nd, you, Alicia Pollock, verbally authorize Royalwise Solutions to debit your banking account ending in 1234 today for $1. Royalwise will send you a receipt to your email address. Is this your email address? Please confirm yes. And then they say yes. Or there's another script if you're storing it to get their permission for storing it. And then, or of course, that signed authorization form that I was showing you earlier. Now that's what happens if you're doing this through the customer. If you are doing this through an invoice or a sales receipt, it basically looks exactly the same way. Here's where that is: payment method, credit card, enter in the credit card details and process it. Or if I do check, this says undeposited funds, but as soon as I click authorization, that's gone. And remembering it. And that's why you have to make sure that this is to the right place, because you don't want it to go to your savings account accidentally. So that's the deal with that. Okay, now I'm not going to process these yet. We are actually going to process some in a few minutes. Okay, and I showed you the manually storing the information for the future. What if you process a payment and it's declined? What if you do a bank transfer and they don't have enough money in their checking account, or their credit card is maxed out? QuickBooks Payments will try it 3 times. You'll get an email. The customer will get an email. And you can, if the customer calls you up and pays with a different method, you can delete that payment and use a different payment method. If they were using the auto pay options that we're about to talk about, it will actually cancel that payment method and they will have to put in a new payment method. Now, for these methods that we were talking about with sales receipt or an invoice where you're putting in the credit card number, this is why it's the keyed in rate, because you're literally keying it in. And so it has higher fees. You're going to pay 3.5% or 3.3% with the Pro Advisor discount. So it's more expensive that way because the payment method has to go through you. So it's a little less secure. But it's also the easiest way to not have to chase accounts receivable. That if your customers are paying at the time of service, sending them an invoice and waiting for them to pay it, now all of a sudden you've got accounts receivable. So if you're one of those companies avoiding accounts receivable, everything's due at the time of service, it's going to be a little more streamlined, but you're going to pay a little bit more for it. Okay, any questions about those methods? JJ, those authorization forms are not PCI compliant depending on what you do with those forms. If you shred them, delete them, and erase them off your hard drive, you're PCI compliant. But if you're storing them either on paper or electronically anywhere, then you are not PCI compliant. So you can use those forms as a way of gathering the information, but you have to destroy them when you're done. Or you use any of these other methods that I'm about to show you where the customer never even gives you the information. Instead of processing the payment yourself, you email or you text an invoice to the client. The first thing that I want to talk about is the new modern invoices and some of the options that you have. So right now we're talking about making an invoice and sending it to the client. And I had mentioned that you can turn on all of your payment methods and then on an invoice by invoice basis, select which ones you want to see. Let's start by doing that. I'm going to go ahead and make a new invoice, and I'm going to use myself as the sample. So hopefully that's not confusing to people, although I want this to go to a different email address so that you can see it. Okay, I don't really want to run any charges, so I'm not going to use the suggested charges. And down here, let's go ahead and I'm just going to charge myself $1 so that I have something to process. So here's my $1 invoice. And when I go to manage, here I go to payment options. And under the payment options, you can see all of these turned on. It's got the complete transparency for the rates that you're paying. And you can turn on PayPal or Venmo as an option right there. You also can turn on tips right here as well. And this is all, again, just for this one invoice. If you wanted to make this universal, you could click Payment Details Manage and go in and turn off settings permanently and then toggle them on when you wanted to. Okay, so we're going to give Alicia all of those options. When you click send to send the invoice, actually, I'm going to go and show it to you in the transaction instead of showing it to you on the slide, but you see the slide right here. What I'm going to point out is the text messaging at the top, the AI option, and revising. So I have this invoice, it's just for $1. And then I come down to the bottom and I click review and send. That gives me a chance to review it. You know what? I need a class on there because I do use classes. Okay, review and send. So what it does is it saves the invoice. And at the top, there's a toggle slider that I don't have to use. But if you wanted, you can put in a phone number right here. I'll go ahead and I'll do it and send it to myself so that you can see it. And then I have permission to send invoices by text. So that's up here. Now here's the invoice itself. Frequently there's an AI option right here that has a different subject line that Intuit has found gets a faster click through. So sometimes you might see that and overriding your subject line, but you can always turn it off. And then here's the email body where okay, I do not want to pay $4,732. Oh, that's because there's a balance due. Okay, I'm just going to go ahead and ride with that balance due. So I'll say in my invoice, please only pay $1. And then I'll send that invoice. So now that invoice has been sent. When I go check my email, let me go ahead and get that pulled up for you. Here's what the email looks like with the review and pay button. I'll click review and pay. Okay, good. It did just give me the $1. Now that I'm in here, you do have the ability to edit the amount. If they wanted to change the amount and do a partial payment, they could. In this case, it's only $1, so there's nothing to do here, but they could change it to half. They can, right now I'm signed in, so it automatically logged me in and pulled up my existing payment methods. If they don't have a QuickBooks account, they basically just choose which payment method they want you to use, and then they can add a tip right down here and then click that payment processor, log in and pay. If they log into their QuickBooks account, they'll see their payment methods that are tied to that payment. I'll go in and pay this one. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and actually pay this right now. The customer can also pick a different payment date if they want to, and so it doesn't pay immediately. It can pay tomorrow or on a different day. They can see the summary right up here. They can view the invoice in order to download it. They can download it right here. They can also print it out. And I'm going to actually run the payment right now. All right, I don't know why it wasn't successful, but I'm not going to muck with it now. As we mentioned before, this is what's called the invoiced rate, or what they call cards and digital wallets, for 2.99% or 2.8 with the Pro Advisor discount, because the payment method is now in the client's hands, so it's more secure. However, once you send them the invoice, now you have to chase them down for payments. Now, I've had clients who were completely skeptical about doing this. And honestly, this review is about 10 years old. But I was with a client and he's in construction and I want to send out my invoices to my clients. That's what they're used to. That's how they want me to pay. I'm like, or that's how they want to pay me. And I'm like, is that how they want to pay you? Or that's just the way they think they have to pay you? So I signed him up for QuickBooks Payments. We sent him one of the invoices, and during our session, he got the payment. And he was just like, oh my God, wait, what? And this happened 15 minutes. And he was like, oh my God, that would have taken me a month to get paid. And so he was just absolutely grateful. And so thank you for Handyman Bob for testing it all out for us. Okay. So let's go ahead and take some questions. Christina's asking, how do you delete a vendor's banking info? So do you mean vendor or customer? Because right now we're talking about client invoicing, not bill pay. So I need clarity on that one. If you have their information, you're talking about a customer, and I think you can, actually, I don't know if you can go in and delete it or not once it's been stored. There must be a way of deleting it, but I don't think I've ever been asked that question. And I don't have it stored here. I don't have anybody to test it on, so I'm not sure if there is a way of deleting it out of your system. If they have a new payment method, you can add multiple payment methods and you can save a checking account and a credit card and toggle between them. So you do have that option. If you replace their credit card, you don't have access to the old credit card. So if you have a customer that actually has two different credit cards they use, in that case, I actually make two different sub-customers. Like maybe they have two different businesses. I'll make a sub-customer for each of the two individual businesses so that the right payment method goes to each invoice. Okay. And JJ is asking, when the customer selects to add a tip when paying the invoice, where does the tip go? That is set up in your chart of accounts in the sales section. There's a place to turn on tips in sales. I guess we might as well go look at it. Account and settings, in sales, and then tips is right here, accept tips. And when you turn that on, then you get a new place to map your chart of accounts for tips. And that shows up. All right, so normally when you turn on tips, it might be because of how this file is set up, but normally when you accept tips, it will find out if it's going to be a tips income, if it's just for you, or if it's a tips liability that has to be distributed out to your staff. Normally that's part of this process right here. I don't know why it's not. Accountant settings, advanced. Oh, there it is. Tips account. Thank you very much for reminding me. Okay, so tips account is that right here. We have it set to tips income, but And in this file, it set it up as an other income because it's not part of regular income. But personally, I think tips income should be up in your income section. And again, it's a liability if you have to distribute it out to your staff. Next topic, this is where it starts really getting fun and creative, is recurring payments. How can we automate this so that you don't have to run every charge for every client every single month? So the first way is a traditional method of a recurring sales receipt. And basically you're using your recurring transactions, which are in QuickBooks Online Essentials and Higher, although they might have added it to Simple Start, but it didn't used to have it. Basically, what you can do is you can create a recurring sales receipt that automatically will run their payment, send them an email, and do all the matching and batching automatically. And the reason why this is beautiful is because you literally set up the sales receipt one time and then your hands off. It's just magic money that shows up in your bank account. This is what I use for all of my bookkeeping clients who are on for their monthly charges. I use it for all of my clients who are on my wholesale program and I'm paying for their QuickBooks. This is how they pay me for it. And so I literally have hundreds of these running every single day, every single month, and some of them every single day. These are processed at the keyed in rate because in order to make a sales receipt, you have to have that credit card information already stored and saved, which means you've either gathered it from them already or you have it stored in some way. So that's why it happens at the keyed rate, because the processing payment went through you. But this was the first automation method. Now there are some new ones, but this is the way that used to be done. And we'll do that by going to recurring transactions and making a new recurring transaction of the type sales receipt. And I'll click OK. And we'll name it. And then you make sure it's scheduled. You could do a reminder if the dollar amount is going to change, but the whole idea here is that you schedule it so that it just runs. And we'll put in mom's ADU. Here's one of the best parts, is automatically send emails, which will email the customer when they run the card. You'll go in and choose whether it's an ACH or a credit card. And then you set up the service and the product and what the automatic charge is and everything else about it. And then this will just go ahead and run itself every single month. So if I have it monthly on the first day every single month, or maybe it's annual, or maybe it's weekly, or maybe I don't want it on the first day. I want it to run on the 5th of the month. So whatever that cadence is, you set this recurring sales receipt, you save it, and it will just run the charge, send the email, run the charge, send the email, run the charge, send the email indefinitely. Or you can do it for 12 times or until a certain date. So that's the recurring sales receipt, traditional method of getting your payment automatically. So I use these extensively. Recently, they have made some new things. The first thing is that you can also make a recurring invoice. Now, this is just a recurring invoice. This is not even a recurring payment. But in the same way that we just did a sales receipt, you can do an invoice instead. And then when you send it, the client has the opportunity to authorize an automatic payment, that when you send this invoice in the mail, the client can pay for it themselves. And there is an option in the payment that we saw where it will automatically pay invoices in the future. In order to do that, the client has to either log into their existing QuickBooks account, or if they don't have one, they have to create a new one. But this is the only part you're responsible here is sending the invoice. All the rest of it is still on the client to pay. But this does come in at the invoiced rate because you're leaving it to the client. But this is more of an automatic AR. What is brand new is a new option to schedule a recurring payment, and like brand new, like a month or two, where you can create a transaction type called recurring payment, and then you send it to the client for authorization. And the client, again, has to log in to their Intuit account or create an Intuit account to save their payment information. But what they do is QuickBooks will automatically create the invoice and the payment and email the client, but the client has authorized it to be paid automatically. The only difference here with this and the sales receipt is that it's the two-step process. Instead of just one sales receipt, it's an invoice and a payment, but they work together. They're essentially one unit with the two steps inside it. Once the client has set up the recurring payment, then they can manage it. They can click the link and update their payment information anytime that they need to. This is what it looks like from the customer side. They get the email, they go in, they log in, and they choose an option that says, by selecting Agree and Pay, I authorize RoyalWise Solutions to charge the payment method listed above on 5/1 and monthly on the first thereafter at $380 plus tax until I cancel. So there's a whole terms of service that they're agreeing to. And then once this has been agreed to, you create that. It will, again, just run an invoice and the payment will happen separately. The way that you do that, the way that looks, is by going to creating an invoice. Then in the invoice, you go down to scheduling down here. Here's that recurring invoice that I was talking about earlier. That is essentially just making a recurring invoice, and the client has the option when they pay to put in their authorization. So that's the second method. The one that is brand new and really helpful is not recurring invoice. So we'll switch back, but recurring payment right here. So brand new. And what that basically means is you put in everything that you need inside this. Now, this is a new transaction type. Let's go ahead and I'm going to close the interstitial here. So it's a recurring payment, new transaction type completely. Not an invoice, not a payment. It's a recurring payment. So you create the recurring payment with what it's for. You also have the option of doing a one-time charge and then an ongoing charge. And so this is nice because you can get creative here, where this first time it will charge them $2, and then after that it will be $1. So you have this ability to separate the charges into one initial startup fee. Like maybe you have an onboarding fee, you can put the onboarding fee in and then just charge the monthly after that. And then you'll pick when it's going to get charged. It will repeat as long as you want it to. And look at this. It can send the client reminders as well to let them know 7 days before, 3 days before, and 1 day before that they are going to get charged. And so you would review and send this. And then let me go ahead and send it to my same email address. And I'll open up the charge and show you. Okay, so here's the details of your recurring payments. First payment amount, including one-time charges, is $2, and then the recurring amount is $1. We're going to go ahead and send that recurring payment. So here's the recurring payment. Go to my recurring payment, opens it up, asks, how do I want to pay? Is it going to be by credit card? Is it going to be by checking account? And then here's the authorization. And so now they are essentially signing a legal agreement to run your automatic payments. And the benefit is that because it's on the invoiced amount, your rate is the invoiced level because, again, you're sending the invoice and they're putting in the payment information. Any questions on that? I don't see any come in. This was, in my prep, my favorite part because I literally had never used this feature and had no idea how robust it had gotten, and that is payment links. You can, in addition to sales receipts and invoices, you can do electronic payments now through a lot of different resources. And so I'm going to show you all of those. The first thing is that you do have the ability to customize your payment link. And when you do that, you basically put in your company name in the URL so that when they receive it, they're going to know that it's not junk or fraud because it actually has your business name in there. You only get to do this one time. So make sure you put in a link customization that you really like. The first place that you can do payment links is in your PDFs themselves. When you are in the sidebar for an invoice, let me go ahead and open up one of those invoices that I just created. When I go to the design section, there's an option right here for add payment link to the PDF. So that PDF that's getting attached can also have a payment link inside the PDF that they can, if your PDF is interactive, they can click on it or they can copy paste it, but that adds it to the PDF itself. Let's do that on the modern invoice and then I can show you what that looks like. So the PDF view now has a view and pay button inside the PDF because of that toggle. So that's the first one. The second one I already showed you. When you send an invoice, that I showed you that slider. So that brought up a text message and that gives me the ability to pay through text. Let me go ahead and bring up my text messages. So here's the text message that showed up. Here's your invoice is ready. And I'll go ahead and click that. And then now I've sent them straight to the same place through a text message. So that is for especially Gen Z and Gen A and millennials, that's one of the ways they're going to expect to be able to pay you is through a hyperlink. The next thing is an actual thing called payment links. And when you go to the sales center, there's an option on the menu that you might never have noticed and clicked on called payment links. And there's two kinds of payment links. One is a one-time link that will send an email and it generates a URL and a QR code. And you can do anything you want with that URL and QR code to get it to that customer. You can go through any of your systems and manually send it to them. And what that looks like is in the sales center, here's payment links. And you may have just never paid attention to it, but boom, there they are. You can also see it in the bar right across the top for payment links here. And there's two sections, a one-time link and a multi-use link. A one-time link is just, I'm sending it to them, but I'm not doing it through email. And so I'll do a one-time payment link. I'll say, hey, I want you to pay me $10 and please pay your part of the dinner we had. Okay, and then I'll send it to the person, I'll send it to their email address. As before, we can turn on and off the payment methods, and now I'll send a payment link. And so that's just a one-time link, and now it emailed it, but I can just copy the link and send it to them, or I can also generate a QR code. And if they're present, they can take a picture of the QR code and use their QR code reader, or you can copy this image and paste it somewhere, and then send it to them that way. So that's what the payment links look like. And here you can see that when I ran one when I was practicing last night, that it says that it got marked paid. This one down here has been deposited, so you can see the status of them. So that is a way of just being able to get something to somebody however is convenient. Now, this multi-use link is the bomb. I have not used this yet, but now my wheels are turning. A multi-use link gives you the same ability to create a URL or a QR code or a buy now button. And then you can send it out to a lot of people. Maybe you're having an event. You can make a ticket for the event and then batch send it to all of these people, and they can just pay for this one-time use ticket. Or maybe you have a booth at a trade show or a fair. You can make a price sheet with all of your products with QR codes, and then the client can just come up and click the QR codes and make their own checkout process. Or even for yourself, you can have it yourself, and when people are coming up and buying things, you can take your phone and just check through what they needed. And or in this case, I have a yoga class. And so if you want people to pay for the yoga class, you make this multi-purpose link. So here it is under multi-use links. I'll make a new payment link. Maybe you're somebody who teaches classes. Then what you can do is use this payment link so that anybody can pay for the class anytime. Okay, you're paying $20 for this class. Let's say I'm doing live QBO classes, and people pay when they show up at the door. And so when they show up, I'll have them scan the QR code. Selling a product and delivering it after I get paid is an option so that you can give them information if you're going to be shipping to them, but I'm not going to do that now. You have those options, and now create link. So now look at all these options. First, you get the link that you can copy and send to them by email or post it. You can even send it on Facebook or Twitter and actually create a post with a payment link right inside it. You can save the QR code, and maybe you have it on a piece of paper, and everybody who comes in, they just scan the link and they pay themselves right then and there. You can also make a buy now button and then paste this buy now button. You can make it any color you want. You can change the text on it, and then you copy this code, and then you can paste this code anywhere on your website. And now you have a payment button using your QuickBooks payments. Isn't that cool? Isn't that super cool? So most people do not know this is there. So definitely spread the word. It's really just fabulous. So now that multi-use payment link is available, and I can send it to them anytime and use it any way I want to. This is permanent. I can make a whole set of these for all of my different services. There's a slide here about posting on Facebook, tweeting, printing out your QR codes, making price sheets, creating buy now buttons, all of those different methods. When sending a payment link, I notice that there's not line items. Which account in the chart of accounts does the income go to? I think it goes probably to either your sales or your sales of product income. Let's go ahead and view this. I'm going to pull it up on my phone and see what happens. Let's go ahead and do this. Okay, so you should see my phone right now. I am going to pull up my camera. I am going to go back and grab that QR code. Hopefully you can still see my phone. And so let's go ahead. I'm even going to do Apple Pay, and I'm just going to pay it automatically through my Apple Pay. Change my payment method to my business card. So now you're seeing payment method. So I just did that off of my Apple Pay. So let's go see what happens now. Let's give that a second to update. Okay, so what I basically just did is I went into the magnifying glass, and here's that sales receipt that just got created. And it doesn't have a customer assigned. It just says services, so it comes in generically. So it's handy, but you're going to lose a little bit of information. You're going to need to go in and update the customer and update the product if you want to. But here you can see that one payment has been taken that way. In the deposits section, here you can also see the transaction that I just ran is now here. I can see that it was processed, and then it tells me that I'm expected to see this tomorrow. So the money is on its way. So I've got that full transparency. When you have more than one transaction, it will also show you all the transactions inside the batch are all there as well. So that's super handy. Seeing your transactions. So there's a couple places where you can do that. One is on the deposits screen. And the deposit screen is here under sales and then deposits. And this shows you all of the transactions that have been processed. And it shows you when it was batched and what is expected, when you are expected to see the transactions. So the ones that just came in that I just ran aren't showing here yet, but they will probably show up in a few minutes. So we can keep an eye on that. So the deposits is right here. I had mentioned the monthly statements. This is what one of the statements looks like. And again, you get there by going to the gear and then to settings and then to payments. And in the payments section, you look in the documents in the monthly statements, and it will bring up a statement. And the statement will show you all the different charges on an individual day. It will break up the different payment methods and the rates that it was processed at. And then here you can even see down, whoops, back here. You can see down here at the bottom all the different rates that were charged, how many transactions, and what those different fees were. And then I really like this aggregated fee percentage. So this is the percentage rate across all of your transactions for the month, whether it was 1% or 2.99% or 3.5%. You're going to see your overall percentage right here. The monthly statements are really handy for that. Okay. Now, I mentioned the merchant service portal where you can see what's happening behind the scenes. Now, this is not a place where you do the work. This is only the place where you go to see what's happening behind the scenes. So I'll go into payments, and then here's the button for manage account. But you might even want to bookmark this. The URL for this is merchantcenter.intuit.com. And if you are a bookkeeper, you can actually switch between the merchant centers for all of your different clients here as well. All right, let me wait on up. There it comes. So here we are in the merchant center. And so this is a place where you have all of your different controls and processing. You can go see all of your transactions. You can change your date ranges. You can also see your batch deposits. You can see the fees that are taken. You can also add readers. You can order or add users. You can order card readers. You can do all kinds of things from here. But like I said, don't initiate transactions from here. Do everything from inside your QuickBooks Online. If you have a refund that you need to process, your refund limitations, your refunds have to be within, for a credit card, it has to be within 90 days. So you only have 3 months to do a refund, and you can only refund up to the amount of the original sale. You can't refund more than any one transaction. For example, if a customer has 3 $100 charges, you can't refund $300. But you can refund each of the $100 charges. As far as ACH goes, you can't refund an ACH. You have to cut them a check or do it outside of the system, with the exception of if they initiated the payment method. And I'll show you them initiating the payment workflow in a minute. Now, the PEBCAC that I see a lot is refund receipts, that people will write a check to refund a customer, and that's okay if it's an ACH refund, because that's the only way that you can give it. But in general, you don't do an expense for a refund. You actually create a refund receipt. And you can do that either by going to plus new refund receipt, or you can, in an invoice, go to more actions and then do a refund for it. So let's look at both of those. So plus new, and then refund receipt is down here. And then when you run that refund, you'll pick where you are refunding from. Now, in this case, I don't think that I have any charges here to refund. Okay, here it is. So then their payment method would already be there, and then you can process the credit card and do a refund for it. Now, notice that there's an alert up at the top. They would rather have you refund a receipt itself or an invoice itself. So let's go up and find an invoice or sales receipt that has been processed. So here's the one. This is what it looks like when the transaction has been processed. You'll see it right here. And there's all the information about that transaction that we just ran. And then here is a refund button right here. And we say, yes, we want to refund the payment. And then it will process the credit card that was put in the system. Now I'm not going to run this refund, but notice what it did here is it's refunding to the exact same product or service that it ran in the first place, and then it would process it. Now the reason why this is not processing right now is it hasn't actually finished the charge. So that if this was a completed charge, then I would be able to refund that one. Like this one right here, I could pick one of these charges and refund one of those. That's 2023 though, so I can't. So always make a refund in order to do a refund, and then you can process it through the system and get into the last section for how to take payments from your customers live in person. So we're going to take a look at swipers and GoPayment. So let's start with the swiper. So that's this thing right here. And in order to order your reader, there's two places where you can do it. You can do it from the QuickBooks phone app or the GoPayment app, or when you are in merchantcenter.intuit.com, there's an option here for order card reader. But when you bring up the app, it gives you that opportunity. So you can order the reader here. They used to have stands, but nobody was ordering them and you didn't really need it. So you can place your order for the reader like this. And I'm not going to go ahead and order the reader right now. What am I kidding? The reader has a lot of different features right in it. You might as well just look at the picture, but that's fine. You can insert your card into the reader to pay like this. You can take the stripe on the back and run the stripe through the... Oh, actually, they got rid of the swiper. I have to change that. There's no more stripe. It's all now tap to pay. That's how the reader works. Now, when you process using the reader, it's only your rates go down. It's 2.5% or a 2.3% for the Pro Advisor rate. And the reason why it's cheaper is you have to be present with the person right there so you know that they're authorizing it. It has a really cool LED on it, and so I just turned it on and it said hello, and then it's going to give me the battery level and it's going to talk to me as we are getting connected. Let's actually talk about the settings on it. So what I'm going to do now is, instead of showing my PowerPoint, I'm actually going to pull up the GoPayment app on the phone. So let me get into that and share my phone with you. So now you are looking at my GoPayment app, and in the center, you can see card readers. So I'm going to tap on card reader. So the type is a Bluetooth reader. There's some older readers in here, the ones that had the mag stripe where you can swipe. I have a couple of those. There's even some old audio jack readers that go into the sound, but you definitely don't want them. You want the Bluetooth reader. Then you can have it chime or make other noises. I've just got it on chime. Here's where you can order the reader right there, and then you can click get reader and you can order your reader. Now, where it says connect new reader, that's where you would do the connection. And the way that you do that is by holding the button down that's on the top of the reader, and then it will look for a new reader. But you can see that I have mine, and you can even see that I've had several readers over time. I've got my old chip and swipe, and then the tap chip and swipe, and now I've got the brand new Bluetooth one. So then I would click connect, and the Bluetooth would connect. Really that easy. And then when you're in the settings for the GoPayment app, it's synchronized to your QuickBooks. So it's bringing up all of those same products and services that we saw on the website. You can even add new products and services from here as well. You can set up your tips. So I clicked on tips right now. I'm accepting tips. I do want to show the tips before the card is inserted. And then I have options for either doing percentage tips or dollar amount tips. And so you can set a flat rate for their tips under dollar amounts, or usually you want to go with percentages because that's what people are used to. So I've got 15, 18, and 20. I've seen some people now do up to 25 or 30% tips, but now tips are available on the swiper. If you can set up your settings for receipts, and if you have sales tax, you can specify what sales tax gets done. You can specify which bank actually you do that on the website. But now here's one of the really important parts. I've got this in the slideshow a little bit later, but you have roles and permissions. And one of the things that you can do here is make a payments only user for GoPayment and for the swiper. So if you have team members who are out in the field, like either field services or trade shows or farmers markets or whatever, you can have your staff have their own payments only logins. And the regular payments only allows the user to see all the transactions and all the invoices across the entire QBO so that they can take a payment for an existing invoice, for example. Take payments only restricted makes it so they can only see the ones that they themselves created. So you would pick which one of these for that particular user. Now, I'm not going to send another invitation, but this is, you would say take payments only or restricted, and then send them an invite, put in their name and email address. So that's how to add users to the app and not have them have full access. Okay, so now I'm going back to the very beginning of the app, and here I'm going to tap the create button down at the bottom. And when I create it, I have a lot of different options. I can take the payment from the customer against an existing invoice. I can just do a receive payment by customer. And what that one does is makes essentially a credit memo. You've taken a payment, but there's no sale in the system. And then you can go later on back in the office, make an invoice, and then use this credit memo to pay that invoice down. A quick invoice will make an invoice, but there's no itemization. You can do a multi-pay link and have it make those QR codes, or you can just plain make a new sale, which is what you'll do probably most of the time. So I'll tap on new sale. And there's two modes. If you look down at the very bottom, you can see it says keypad and items. If I do keypad, I can very simply put in the dollar amount that they are paying. So here's $10, and then I can add that $10 charge, and then maybe they're doing another $2 charge, and I can go ahead and do their order by typing in charges. And then when I review the order, I can see all of the individual charges. I'm going to hit the back button, and then I'm down at the bottom. It says items, so I'm going to tap on items. This allows me to have all of my items in my system. So this is great when you're out in the field. You can say, all right, we are doing here's my product sold. We're doing some specialty cabinets, and we are doing some masonry. And so I'll review that order. Let's put a dollar amount on that masonry. And so here I am in the field. I can add sales tax, I can add in discounts, and then I can, now I don't really want to run a charge for all of those, so I'm going to delete these and just do a $1 charge so I can actually run it for you. So back here, do a $1 charge. Okay, now what I wanted to show you is that we have the option for the card reader or the scan. I'm going to first start with the card reader. And so it's now asking me, do I want to put a tip on it? Sure, let's put on a tip. It's now finding my card reader. I'm going to push the button on the reader and make sure it finds it. So now it found it. It says hello. It's connected. It now sees the $2 right on it, and it's asking me to either insert the card or I can also do a tap to pay. And so I'm just going to hold it up. You heard the beep, and now it's processing that card. And I just processed a credit card. That easy. So now I'm not going to send a receipt, but you can print a receipt, you can email a receipt, whatever you want to do there. And now I'm set up and ready for the next sale. So that's how easy it is to use GoPayment out in the field. Then the next piece is the tap to pay.